All right. So, are you thinking about buying an e-commerce brand right now? So, you better buckle up. Tariffs on Chinese imports are spiking and throwing the entire e-commerce sector possibly into chaos. We'll talk about that. Margins are likely to get squeezed, valuations could be dropping, and deal terms, they're going to change. There's a guy on X called Casey Adams. He's a founder of Harkla, a $5 million Amazon brand. Says these new tariffs could raise product costs by as much as $2,000 for him. And these are sellers who rely on Chinese sourcing for watching profits vanish overnight. So what does that mean to an e-commerce buyer like you, whether you're trying to buy or sell? Today, I have Steven Speer from e-commerce lending joining me on the show. He's funded hundreds of e-commerce deals and knows exactly how this tariff storm is changing or likely to change the landscape of business buying e-commerce world. Welcome to the show, Steven.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it, John.
Well, I think we're kind of the first to talk about this. So tell me a little bit about how, my first question is, how do you underwrite a tariff risk in e-commerce acquisitions right now? Maybe it's not real yet, it's not being felt, but what would that look like?
Yeah, that's a really good question, John. I think what we're seeing right now is a little bit of a lag between what's transpired the last few weeks and what has really affected Main Street. And we really haven't seen it affect deals at all, nor underwriting. But I could see in the near future as sellers start ordering more products and face these tariffs, we're going to see. I think we're going to see suppliers lower their price, candidly, from China. We're going to see prices increase across the Amazon platform and other platforms. And ultimately, everybody's going to share the burden. It's not just going to lay on the consumer at all. And we're also starting to see a little bit of the Chinese manufacturers have overseas operations, primarily in Vietnam. We're going to see those, those suppliers start outsourcing basically their products and sell through countries like Vietnam, and we're seeing that right now.
Yeah, but is that still, let's say, Chinese connected?
Well, it's the products will be coming from, for example, one example on one of the deals that we have going on right now, the Chinese supplier does have a Vietnam wing of their supply chain, and they're going to be providing products through that warehouse, and they're not subject to the 145% tariffs on Chinese goods. I believe the Vietnam tariffs were reduced, either eliminated or reduced to 10%. I haven't been able to find.
Yeah, I don't think that's. I think Vietnam's actually siding with China at the moment. So I don't know where that's going. Their Chinese are cozying up to them, trying to make friends, because there's a long history of that. And
as of 2 days ago, Vietnam was in negotiations with the Trump administration to relieve, to have a level playing field, and that's the last I heard, unless something's changed most recently.
And it's dynamic, so
yeah, it's ever changing.
Yeah, have you financed any e-commerce deals where the product comes from China recently? Just
absolutely,
yeah.
Yes. And I think, it has we have one deal that was supposed to close last week, and a large deal. I believe it was around $15 million. And the sellers and buyers took a pause, and they're going to wait 30 days to see how this all shakes out before proceeding with the closing, which I think it's a wise move. Like you mentioned, it's ever changing. 1 minute it's 25% tariff, then it's 90%, now it's 145,
it's 124.
And it just keeps moving. So we'll see how this shakes out, but I think we'll know pretty quickly, let's say within the next 30 to 60 days, how it's going to shake out with China, and hopefully during that time frame it doesn't disrupt business as much as people may think. There's a lot of fear mongering going on.
Yeah, but it's China's one of those partners that I don't think Xi Jinping is going to blink. They have $1 trillion surplus, and I think that it's at some point they will negotiate, but that's going to be after a lot of card playing.
Yeah,
high stakes poker. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a 3D
Yeah.
chess match right now. So we'll
Yeah.
see what happens there.
What do you think the debt service coverage ratio do you see in these deals with these variable costs? And I for instance, I looked at a tennis company,
Okay.
kind of a course plus a racket, and it was one of those wood rackets where you learn how to hit on a small deal, but they bought every 6 months. So great, they can last 6 months, but now they're going to have to reorder for another 6 months, and that's going to look different.
Yeah, it will. Again, what we're seeing, at least initially here, is that suppliers are reducing the prices, absorbing the tariffs. Whether that'll continue or not is to be seen. And we're definitely going to see price increases, but I don't think it's going to be astronomical. Again, a lot of fear mongering. People think prices are going to double overnight, and they're just simply not.
Yeah, what about that guy? Did you follow that guy, Casey Adams, founder of Harkla? He builds helmets for safety helmets for children, and he was talking about, this is on X, about a 2,000% increase for him, his cost to get it out of uh, Los Angeles to ship to him.
Well, I think a lot of sellers or business owners, for that matter, are going to diversify their supply chain, and they're going to start having products made elsewhere and not necessarily in China. And hopefully, some of them bring manufacturing back to the United States. And I think was the biggest intent of this tariff. Let's call it a tariff war. Is that to bring
Releveling, recalibrating.
recalibrating, right, and have a level playing field, and hopefully that means that things will start being made in our country again.
Yeah, that'd be nice. Uh, I do want to note that Casey Ames, who has bought a couple of companies, one of his other companies is a course company with 100% margins, which he makes 40 to 50% of revenue from that. And that's all United States based. So he's he is not completely going to be destitute. He still has this business to rely on anyway. So how would you treat these seller ad backs when they do come, when you see it, when cost of goods may increase 20, 30, 100% due to tariffs? How, how's that going to
Yeah,
look on a...
yeah, I'm a little confused by your question. In terms of ad backs, ad backs are added back. What I don't see the relationship between that and COGS.
Yeah.
So
Well, being that it may be just a one-time expense, it's not going to be there next year. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, if it's one time, then definitely that becomes an ad back. And also keep in mind, and your listeners should, I'm sure they're aware that we did hit quite a road bump between 2020 and 2022 with the supply chain situation, with transportation costs going through the roof,
Yeah.
and a lot of these Amazon resellers still sold product, and they still had good margins, and they still made money. As some cases they weren't able to, they ran out of product, which a couple of our clients did, but overall, we did see prices increase, but we also saw sales increase. And the supply chain situation was pretty ugly. I think all of us remember that,
Yeah, the
and we're
gas
able
went
to
from a
ride that out.
dollar 80 to like $5 in
Yeah.
some places, yeah. Or more in California. Yeah.
So we were able to survive that, and I think this tariff situation will be able to survive it. I think in some respects there's going to be some things that are going to be permanent, and some things that are going to go away once hopefully our administration's able to negotiate a more level, at least, playing field.
Yeah. It doesn't seem like the current administration's at all too concerned about consumer goods, the cheap goods like sneakers coming back to the United States. They're more concerned about, the cell phones, computers, things that we need to run the economy, not, $100 sneakers or $400 sneakers that are, $20 to make in China.
And we're starting to see a lot of the chip makers commit to bringing manufacturing back to the United States. So that's happened the last couple of days. So that was good to see.
Yeah, Nvidia is coming back to Phoenix. It's a
Right.
huge
Right.
$500 million commitment. Yeah.
A lot of jobs for Phoenix. And this is, this is a positive result of the tariffs. I know that, again, there's a lot of fear mongering on TV, but there are a lot of positive aspects of tariffs and bringing manufacturing, bringing jobs back to the United States.
Okay, now I know you haven't seen it yet because not a lot of deals are crossing your table. Even one is paused for a thing. Are you seeing any reason to reduce loan to value or loan amounts on e-commerce deals?
They haven't been affected. I can see potentially, to your earlier point, seeing debt service coverage ratios internally, meaning within lenders, be increased from the base level of 1.15 up to maybe as high as 1.5 to absorb the increase of COGS. But I think all smart underwriters will realize that we're going to see prices increase proportionately to the tariffs, and also a lot of the suppliers will be absorbing the increases. So, but in terms of loan to value, it hasn't been affected. I don't see it being affected, and so based on what's transpired the last several weeks.
What about working capital requirements or reserves or escrows? Are they going to be hit with these tariffs post close or?
Well, what we're doing, we build working capital into all of our deals, and yeah, so a lot of the working capital of a lot of the money is used to buy inventory upon closing of the business, meaning closing of the transaction. And it's going to prompt me to build as much working capital into a deal as possible, because obviously COGS are potentially going to go up, and probably the sooner they buy product, the better, depending on what transpires in the
Yeah.
coming weeks.
Let's take
But
an example. For
yeah,
instance, let's say that tennis company with the racket, the wood racket. So normally last year they'd buy $500,000 worth of goods. Maybe they hit some levels where, you know, unit price goes down at $500,000, but now they can only buy $400,000 and the unit cost goes up.
yeah.
So now to sell the same amount, they're going to have to spend a lot more money doing this. I mean, uh, is this just going to be a bumpy year where they're just going to have to absorb this, or?
Yeah, I could definitely see that scenario happening. And again, our intent here at e-commerce lending is to build in as much working capital as possible for our clients, and also to make sure they have significant post-closing liquidity for road bumps or speed bumps. But I think this is a short-term issue, and I see it. I don't have my crystal ball, but I definitely see it going away.
Yeah. You think it's going to recalibrate at the next 12 months, or because I think, China's, they're offended, right? They have to figure out a way to not lose face in this deal. It's very Asian culturist.
Very
Yeah.
much, very much so.
Yeah.
I don't see them caving. I do see a compromise though. I don't think it's going to be a one-sided negotiation on either side. But again, we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah. What kind of collateral do you think you need for an inventory heavy type e-commerce business?
Yeah. So in terms of collateral, the SBA doesn't require collateral. We like to see it, but it's not necessarily required. And for I think back to your earlier point, we definitely want to see a significant working capital built into the deal to absorb, price increases, and you know, our buyers having to increase the amount of inventory they purchase at one given time.
Yeah, let's make a distinction. It's like some of the $5 products that you sell for 20 versus a $500 or $1,000 product. It's a little bit slower moving. I mean, what's the difference going to be there?
I mean, it's a big difference. I think the higher the price point, the more impact the tariffs are going to have. I mean, if a I don't know, if a pen goes from $1.50 to $2, I don't think it's going to really dissuade anybody
It's
from buying a pen.
fungible. We'll figure out how to find it.
Candidly, I'm personally, this my own personal opinion. I'm more concerned about the tariffs, the European tariffs, because a lot of us drive European automobiles, and I'm a little bit, and they're higher price points, obviously. So I'm concerned about the German car makers, Italian car makers having those prices go up significantly, because that could really hurt the car market.
Good, but those people, the EU has already been invited to the White House to renegotiate and recalibrate those tariffs. And it's not so much as like, hey, you know, you sell a lot of German products in the United States. Great. Can we now sell Ford and GM and our American cars in Europe, please?
I'm with you. I mean, I have relatives in Europe. I happen to be born, you're from Europe. And I could tell you that my relatives, one in particular, bought an American car and there was 100% tariff on that American car.
100%. Yeah. Yeah.
So, and that was years ago. I don't know what it is now, but yeah, again, level playing field. And I think ultimately the United States is going to come out a winner overall. But there's going to be a little bit of pain. And I think as Americans, we're resilient. And I think, most people understand that there's a little bit of initial pain, but overall and long term, it's going to help our country.
All right, so let's put your crystal ball on, and I'm coming to you, or somebody's coming to you wants to buy an e-commerce company. What are you going to recommend? Like, here's some advice based upon the tariffs, and I'm buying from China. So a lot of my products. So
Yeah.
what's your advice to?
I would definitely look at, see how many suppliers a given company has. Do they have multiple suppliers in different regions of the world, or is it just China? So I would look at that. That's imperative. I'd also request P&L statements, profit and loss statements that are broken down by month to see movement of COGS and to be able to forecast moving forward if COGS is going to be a huge issue.
Versus
So
year to year, you'd want to see month to month.
I'd want to see a monthly breakdown to see what effect the tariffs have on COGS. So, for example, let's just say right now it's October or November, where a lot of the buying happens. I would want to definitely see the COGS numbers broken down by month for the previous 9 months. I mean, I think that would be prudent, and because a yearly amount based on last year really doesn't help very much. But I would see that, and I would definitely have a lot of discussions with the seller and see what their take is on the tariffs and what they feel the effect of on the business will be, and hopefully they're candid and they tell you the truth. But I would do far more due diligence and also start seeking additional sourcing prior to closing of the given products that
Yeah.
the business sells.
What do you think about the multiples? Let's say he's selling at a reasonable 2.8 multiple. Tariffs come in. Is it justified anymore? And he gets majority of his products from China.
I think it depends on the deal structure. On the larger deals, the non-SBA deals that we do, I would encourage a fairly large earnout that's tied to EBITDA and not revenue.
Yeah.
And so if there is a situation, I think that mitigates risk in terms of, on the larger deals. And on the smaller deals, I would tie a seller note and have certain EBITDA or SDE thresholds on that seller note. So if net profit does take a hit, it lowers the amount of the seller note, and ultimately at the end of the day, that buyer would buy that business for less money because the
Yeah, something like
seller
it
note would be
triggered if
pared
it
back.
was a 15% pretty healthy e-commerce EBITDA
Yeah,
and it drops to 5, you go, I can't pay you, right?
yeah, yeah.
Would you withhold payments or just no payments?
No, I'd have a curtailment written on the APA asset purchase agreement that if certain EBITDA numbers or SDE numbers aren't met, that whatever $300,000 seller note gets pared down to a smaller number or eliminated altogether.
And that seller note, what would you say, 30% of a cap stack or
No, generally they're 10 to 20.
10 to 20?
Yeah, I would
Do you
say
see any
20%.
changes in higher seller notes with that?
I could
Possibly
see
with these
that.
tariffs? Yeah.
I could see seller notes increasing and having it as long as they have that, reverse earnout where or clawback, meaning the seller note can be reduced if
If you
certain
see a
earn.
erosion in
Oh,
EBITDA or net income. Yes.
absolutely. I could
Yeah.
see that increasing to maybe instead of 10 to 20%, maybe 20 to 30% on SBA deals, and then the larger deals, I could see earnouts increasing.
Yeah. Steven Spear, that's fantastic advice. I really appreciate you giving an update on this tariffs. I'd like to have you back on maybe after 6 months and see what's fleshing out, what came true.
Absolutely, I think we're all going to be survivors. I think it's going to be a little bumpy, and but ultimately, I think M&A is still very vibrant. We have a lot of deal flow right now, a tremendous amount of deal flow, And it's just doing a little extra due diligence to make sure you're not buying a business that, is going to be overly affected by the tariffs
Yeah.
and not make money, because ultimately you buy a business to grow it, not buy a business to
Yeah.
survive.
Yeah. I love the earnout suggestion. That's a great idea with the seller note, and then it drops or claws back with an erosion of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect. Stephen, thank you so much for spending time with me.
John, thanks for having me on.